This is part one of a tutorial on accessing, utilizing the GIS and mapping functions within PLL. So this tutorial does assume that you have a basic understanding of PLL sans the map functions. So we're basically going to add on the map to some common functions to augment and enhance the workflow, hopefully for you by using that the visual advantage that the map provides. Also will allow you to access GIS information that you would otherwise have to have gone outside of the permitting to determine. So the first thing I want to do is show you how to actually invoke the map, turn it on inside the CityWorks PLL application. In the upper right hand corner are three buttons that manipulate the map view. The most common one is the center side by side, and what that does is it turns the map on and basically splits the screen between the tabular view and the map view. There's two other buttons here, and one is to just maximize the map in its entirety. So if you just want to do mapping functions and perhaps measure some things or draw on the map or maybe even print a map out, you could do those functions there. The other is where we started, and that's the far right one, is to minimize the map view and maximize the tabular view of this whatever screen you're on at the time. So let's start with the split screen here and just demonstrate one function. But first, let me go ahead and set up my map a little bit. You will notice that I have some toolbars on what's called the favorites toolbar, so I'm going to turn those off so it'll look more like your screen when you first come into the map. So the tools menu on the map allows you to do specific things beneath it. So if I wanted to look at the legend of the map, I could click on that function right there, and it's going to pull up my legend. Now, if you're familiar with desktop GIS or using any other online map viewer, you'll notice that I've got check boxes in these. This means if it's visible or invisible, and if you mouse over it, you'll know what that selection means. So if I didn't want, or as I say, I wanted my major and collector street plan on, I could click that button right there to check box it on, and it will show up here in the map, and vice versa. So the other thing before I really dive into that is if I have these functions such as a legend that's very commonly used, I can turn those on to add them to the favorites toolbar. So you'll notice if I hit that checkbox, I now have a tool that I can quickly access without having to go under the tools menu each time. So I'm going to turn on a few, the legend, maybe locate, bookmarks, perhaps attribute search, measure, redline. Probably be a good little tool set to start with. And you'll notice that my screen is small, and my favorites toolbar does get kind of continued over to the other side. It really is not an issue if you maximize your map because they're all there, and if I needed to do some measurement, for instance, I could do that quite easily. And let's maybe do an area measurement. So you kind of can play around with these tools and use them as you see fit. So back to the legend again. There's a few things that do need to happen if you want to interact with particular layers, namely the parcel layer. So if I want to be able to select parcels from a permit, I'll need to expand that parcel layer, and I need to turn on the parcel polygons there and at the group level as well. So this little dot here, this radio button, dictates whether this layer is actually selectable or not. So if you've used ArcGIS or Desktop GIS, this will be a familiar concept to you. But if you're interacting with a permit for addresses or whatnot, these layers do need to be selectable in the map. So I would just turn them on at this point, and then they'll be there. So let's jump back to the common function. We're in a search screen, so we'll just start off from here. I'm going to do a codes commercial new permit type, and I put in a date range in here just to get some results back. And so I'm going to run a search on that. And even though I don't have the map open, there are things happening behind the scenes. So if I open my map back up, I'm going to see, let me zoom out a little bit. These search results, they've come across in the list here, but I also will see them on the map. So if I select or mouse over one, you'll see in the West End area that green marker popping up on the map there. So I can open the permit here just as I always have, or I can open it off of the map by hitting a control click. These numbers here indicate that there is more than one, in this case two, different permits in very close proximity, so it wouldn't make sense to have those kind of clumped together. So it does what we call a spider, and once you click it, it'll spider out all the ones, and you can click on the particular one that you're interested in. If I zoomed out some more, you'd start seeing these other ones, and they start changing color after a little bit. So there's 14 in the downtown area that particular to the search, and I can click on those again, so they're grouped together. They'll expand out like that, and I can open those up. So let's zoom into this one downtown here, and another handy feature, if you accidentally zoom out or zoom in too far, there is a previous extent button. It's pretty handy. Take me back into where I last zoom to, and then the same thing if I have the forward button for the next extent, it take me where I came from previously. So I'm going to pan up, find this particular one via just looking on the map here. So there's actually a couple real close here together. It could actually be on the same parcel. So I'll open one of those. Now it does from the map takes a second or two to open up here. So this 801 Church Street. So open that from the map. If I was already on this permit, and let's say I had the map over here somewhere else, once I select the main tab, the map is going to scroll to that particular permit location here. Also, not as important, I would say, for codes permit, because there's only typically a single single parcel on a building permit. But if this was a stormwater grading permit or something to where we had multiple addresses, or maybe even different GIS features other than property, such as segments, roadway segments, or non-land polygons in the map that I've related my permit to, I can use the tool select assets or highlight on map by selecting the box and hitting the select. So this is actually going to select the parcel feature that is, and I'm sorry, you don't have to check that box. If you just click the button, it will select the map feature that's related to. So in this case, the 0.29 acre parcel, which you'll see that actually matches the object ID and the asset ID over here. So this is the parcel extent. So it's a little redundant on a codes permit because you already have that marker that we saw earlier. But it is helpful if there's multiple addresses or multiple features tied to a particular permit. So let me jump back and if I want to clear that selection, there's a button right here to unselect it. So